So as you're walking around in society, you are implying that you are consenting to the physical contact that may result. Nobody complain about jostling in the supermarket or on a busy street, or a person at a party who shakes your hand in friendship or slaps you on the back in friendship. Now, it's worth noting that the trespassory torts are right-based torts. So the tort of battery is there to let people control their body and control their dignity. So we do have the right to control our body and control our dignity. However, if we consent to someone touching us, then we're waiving those rights. So the consent is a defense to battery, and there is implied consent whenever you're walking around in the world. Which brings us to sexual battery consent. There was an issue with this, I forget the case exactly, but there was a minority who thought that because sexual encounters aren't like punching someone in the face or these other inherently harmful activities, that a new tort should be created, and the issue of consent or non-consent should be put in the hands of the plaintiff. So if you are charging someone or bringing action for sexual battery, or a tort of sexual battery, then it is the burden of proof rests with you to prove that you did not consent to the physical touching. And the majority decided that no, the burden of proof should be as it is with all the other intentional torts, because sex is not the same as walking around on a bustling street. It's a very targeted, chosen interaction between two people, as opposed to being in a crowded public area. So, assault. Actually, I guess one more thing about sexual assault. The issue, they've extended the limitations of when you can bring action for sexual assault because of the awareness of the harm principle, I believe. So it may take decades and decades and decades before you become aware of the harm that's been inflicted on you. And when you become aware of the harm that's been inflicted on you, that's when you can take a tort of action or bring action against the defendant, and I believe that's when the statute of limitations begins. I'm not sure. Assault is disturbing the sense of security of someone, so it's not actually touching them, it's just disturbing their sense of security. So, and it must create a reasonable apprehension of imminent battery, so a reasonable apprehension that they are imminently going to be interfered with. The defendant also has to appear to have the ability to follow through on the threat. However, the plaintiff does not necessarily need to be frightened. So this comes down to the bottom point where the justification for the tort of assault is peace of mind. We have a right to not be bothered by people on the street who want to fight us all the time, even if they're very small people who would never be able to harm us. And we're gigantic people who could fight them off easily. We still have a right to not walk around and have people bothering us all the time. And it's worth noting that just because you are assaulted, it doesn't give you the legitimate right to attack them. The assault can be used to help you if you need if you need to argue self-defense. So if you do end up getting in a fight, the assault that led up to it can help you prove self-defense. Damages will be assessed on the significance of the interference, though the damages for the assault will be relatively small, especially if they're accompanied by a battery. Damage will be greater for longer history of the threats and security, which may perhaps create a long-term psychological impact on the plaintiff. So if you're assaulted repeatedly over a number of years and there's a great damage to your psyche, then damage will be awarded, or damages will be greater in those instances. Okay. So the test to decide if it's okay to, and this is very vague, we're going to get into defenses later, but the test for using assault as a precursor to self-defense is asking, is it acceptable to use violence in self-defense in this instance, and what was the extent of the violence, and was that acceptable? So if someone says, you know, hey man, I'm going to punch you, and you wind up and smash them in the face, then, it may not have been acceptable to use violence in that instance, and the extent of the violence might have been, way over the line. Conditional threats are not important anymore. It's all about the impression that's created in the mind of the plaintiff. So is there peace of mind compromised, and do they feel they are at risk of imminently experiencing an interference with their self? So do they have the impression they're about to receive an imminent battery? And that's what we did. Forward in torts.